Hey, what's going on, sports card fans? This is Ray from Philly here. It's Wednesday, January the 15th. Welcome to another episode of Sports Card Talk, episode number 3. I'm joined by my co-host here, Mike from This Baseball Card Life. What's
Great to
going
be
on,
back
Mike?
with you, Ray. Yeah, not
Yeah,
much.
great to have you on again, Mike. I appreciate it. And we're joined by a special guest. This is our first guest that we're having on the show tonight. If you haven't seen his channel already, you're living under a rock. This guy has a great channel on YouTube and on Facebook. I want to give a big welcome to Mr. John Mangini of the Mangini Collection. What's going on, John?
Glad to be here.
Thanks for being on. We really appreciate it. So we just want to go over a few questions about, your collection and, how you got started. And, I guess the main topic is going to be about vintage cards, which is pretty much right up our alley. But I guess first off, I'll start off by saying, how did you get started in collecting baseball cards? What got you? What was the thing that got you buried right into it?
Yeah, well, so my mom always tells the story that she bought me my first cards when I was 2 years old. Although my mom has a tendency to exaggerate. I remember buying cards. The first pack I remember her buying me a pack at a convenience store in 1973.
Wow.
And that was the first pack I actually remember opening. Although, 74, I certainly had more cards.
Right.
And I was, when I grew up, I was just a baseball fanatic. So I loved everything about baseball. My father, he was a big sports fanatic. He watched every Pirate game. My grandmother, his mother, watched every Pirate game. And so, he used to put me on my lap when he was watching Clemente. Although I don't remember it, I'm a little too young for that. But so I grew up with, Clemente as my idol.
Right. So you grew up a Pirates fan in the Pittsburgh area?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I was such a Clemente fan that in the 5th grade, I'll never forget this, at recess, there was a Roberto Clemente book. It was a paperback.
Mm-hmm.
And man, I would read that every single recess just for hours and hours. And after, many, many weeks of this, the teacher finally handed it to me. She said, just take it home with you. And I still have that book today. It's all beat up and wrinkled, but I have it in my library.
That's awesome. That's great.
Yeah, I want to show you something. So
Yeah.
I had a babysitter who actually went to the stadium, and Roberto Clemente posed for this picture.
Oh, wow.
This is a one-of-a-kind original photograph shortly before his death, judging by the uniform.
Wow.
Wow.
She knew I was such a Clemente fan.
Yeah.
She brought me that one day.
Yeah. You could see the Three River Stadium in the background.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
That's
That's
awesome.
beautiful. So, John, how would you kind of define you as a collector? Are you like a set collector, singles, graded only? Kind of how would you define yourself?
That's a great question. I literally collect everything. I mean, I really do. I do build a lot of the old vintage sets.
Okay.
I collect modern cards too. I always compare my collecting to kind of like music. I'm into all genres of music, and I get into kicks, right? Like I might be on a rock kick, I might be on a R&B kick, I might be on a jazz kick, for a while. And it's kind of that with collecting.
Mm-hmm.
I'll buy nothing but vintage for a while, then I'll get on a modern kick and I'll buy modern cards. So I really collect everything.
Right.
Obviously, with the modern cards the way they are, set collecting isn't really what they're about. You couldn't possibly put together every insert and autograph and jersey card.
Yeah,
So
I think you
think
go
that,
broke doing that. Yeah.
Yeah, it would be impossible to find them all. Ones of 1, 1 of 25, all that good stuff. So I don't really get into modern set collecting. Or the rainbows. I know a lot of people do the rainbows and
the parallels and all that. Yeah.
Yeah, but I do buy a lot of, new cards.
Yeah. I'm kind of the same way. I dabble with some of the modern stars too, because, you still love the game as a fan. And it's fun sometimes to just collect current players and watch them grow into their career. And then you feel like you're following their career when you get their rookie cards. So, but I mean, I'm vintage at heart, first and foremost, just like you are. So, but it's fun to dabble with the modern cards as well. But who's your favorite player to collect? Is it safe to say Clemente or?
It is, but you know, as a true fan, I want all the great players.
Hmm.
When
Sure.
I was little, my friends and I grew up in the country, and we would walk a mile through the woods to a flea market on Sundays,
Hmm.
and they would have the vintage cards.
Right.
And my friends, they'd all be buying up the guys from the late 70s, early 80s, the modern guys, cards they didn't have in their collection, like Steve Garvey and so forth. And I used to read baseball books when I was a little kid. Every baseball card book I could get my hands on. And I knew all the old players.
Hmm.
They never heard of people like Burley Grimes, but I did. And so at the flea market, I would be buying all these old vintage guys, and they never heard of them. So I didn't really have any competition from them. And that's how I started. I ended up with a huge vintage collection, and I was very young, by the time I was in junior high.
Right.
Yeah.
That's pretty cool. Mike?
Yeah. Like a favorite set. Do you have 1, 2, or 3 you could kind of name that you just plain
Yeah,
love?
I have many. I
Okay.
love the Colgan's chip set. Oop, if you could see that.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
It's
Wow.
Honus
Yeah.
Wagner there. Sorry for the lighting. I actually have the tin too.
Nice.
What year did those come out?
Those were 1909 to 1911.
Okay. A little before my time. Okay.
Wow.
Yeah, the 1933 the Long Gum.
Great
Another
set.
one I really love.
Oh,
This Pie Trainer
geez.
was always on my want list growing up. That's you get the Jimmy Fox. I have a bunch of these actually, but I'll just show you a few. Left
Oh,
and
they're
Grove.
awesome.
This
Wow.
one's beautiful, Mickey Cochran.
Yeah.
Of course,
Yeah.
his career ended a little early because he got beamed.
Right.
The Tattoo Orbit, and this is one of probably the toughest card from the set, at least the toughest major player, Rogers Hornsby.
Right. That's a beautiful set. Yeah.
So the Tattoo Orbit, I don't have one laying around, but I love the 58, the 1958 tops, and I love the 75 tops. I know
Right.
there's mixed
Yeah.
emotions on this set, but I
Yeah.
love
I
that
love
set.
that
This
set.
is the mini. I love collecting the minis.
Yeah. Yeah. What do you think is a set out there that, in your opinion, is undervalued?
Hands down, I think there are several. Number one, the 1964 Topps Giants. I mean, you could pick those up for next to nothing.
That's a great set.
The beautiful Kellogg's cards,
Yeah.
very undervalued. The Hostess cards,
Hmm.
you
Yeah.
know, and also the Post and Jello cards.
Yeah.
These are very undervalued as well. But for a vintage, this is hands down the most undervalued set.
Hmm.
The 1912 T207. There's a
Right.
Walter Johnson there. That's one of the more expensive cards in the set. Here's the Buck Weaver.
Wow.
Here's the Eddie Cicotti. I mean, look how beautiful these cards are. Here's the actual package that came in. There were different backs, but this is Little Recruit, and that's the most common. The other two big cards in this set are the Smokey Joe Wood and the Tris Speaker.
Mhm.
These cards are so much more rare than the T206 and T205s, but they don't really get as much love. That Walter Johnson's a tough card.
Right.
So's that Buck Weaver. Heck, they're all tough. But that's hands down, vintage-wise, that and also the Colgan's chips. I mean, you could pick up all the stars in there. They have the Cy Young's going to be expensive, the Ty Cobb, the Honus Wagner, the Tris Speaker. But other than that, I mean, you could pick up a home run Baker in that for far less than you can a T206,
Right.
Eddie Collins, all those types of players.
Yeah. There's a couple of sets from the 30s. I think the 36 Gaudy it's a small set. It's only about 30, 40 cards. I think that's very undervalued as well. That's a pretty cool set too. Mike, did you have a?
The
Yeah,
36 Gaudy,
They're like
yeah,
black and white. Yeah.
Yeah. I got a whole bunch of those.
All right, next up, we want to ask you about like resources that you use or have used to kind of learn a lot about the hobby, like books like this. What kind of information do you use to kind of get information about cards?
Yeah, that's a great question. I was an only child growing up, and I've pretty much collected my whole life in obscurity. I mean, nobody other than my immediate family even knew I had a collection until a few years ago when I decided to make a Facebook page and show my cards. So I really didn't have a lot of interaction from the time when I was little to learn about these cards and so forth. So I relied number one on the great magazines, like Baseball Cards magazine back in the day. In fact, I have hanging up the very first issue of that. That's a great one. The Beckett magazines, Beckett Vintage, and they did away with that one, but it's back. That comes out every other month. Sports Collectors Digest, always loved that magazine. The Standard Catalog of Baseball Cards. I'll always pick that up, and I'll just read through it. You know, they catalog every set and tell you a little bit about it. So wherever you know, any kind of publication I can get my hands on to learn about these cards.
Yeah. Well, leading back to vintage, what era do you consider to be vintage? Like, where do you think it starts from?
Yeah, you know, back in the day, it was always considered that 1978 was the cutoff. But I think it's really a matter of personal opinion.
Right.
I mean, 1980 is vintage. 1982 is vintage now. You know,
I agree.
Maybe in 1990 that didn't seem so far away, but to young kids, that's real vintage.
Yeah.
So I think that's a matter of preference. You know, I don't let the industry dictate to me, you know, certain things. You know, they like put rules on what is a rookie card and what's a prospect card and all this and that. You know, I collect what I like.
Right.
Yeah. So, like, what advice would you give people, you know, watching the show, you know, just starting out? Maybe they just have some modern cards and want to kind of get into more vintage cards.
Yeah, that's a good question. You know, the number one thing is collect what you like. I think, you know, when you put a collection, when you start to collect, or you want to start to collect vintage, for instance, you have to decide, are you collecting or are you investing? Because they're two very different things.
Absolutely.
You know, I mean, the difference of a half grade can be $500 or $1,000 sometimes.
Oh yeah.
So what is your purpose? If you're collecting for the love of it, I prefer raw cards. I'm not really that into grading. I mean, quite honestly, the only reason I buy graded cards is because there were so many unscrupulous people in the hobby over the years, and I don't mind lesser condition cards, but I don't want them altered. I don't want them colored in. I don't want them trimmed. You know, I want to know that they're a real card. I actually like the fact that they're circulated. You know, that some kid played with these cards. I don't want my vintage cards to look crisp and right out of a pack to me.
Right.
So, you know, I would say buy from reputable dealers, collect what you like, start out maybe a little slower, you know, with some of the lower priced cards. And, you know, there are a lot of sets around that you can pick up for a fraction of the price when you're talking about vintage players. For instance, if you want to collect from their playing days, you can look at the 1914 Polo Ground set, those game card type of things, 1968 Topps game cards, the 69 Deco Edge, those kinds of inserts. And like I said before, the Kellogg's cards, the post serial cards. If you don't have a lot of money, you can pick up, you know, Hall of Famers from their playing days pretty inexpensively. There are some great sets too, like the 60 Fleer and 61 Fleer greats.
Oh yeah.
The 63 Bazooka greats. I love those cards.
Yeah.
So that's the thing. And if you're gonna, you know, delve in and buy some higher end, definitely stick with graded until you really know what you're looking for.
Right. Yeah, that was going to lead to my next question. Do you collect graded or just raw, or a little bit? It looks like you collect both, graded and raw.
I do. You know, I calculated. I think it would be $1 million to grade all my cards. I'm not even exaggerating. So, you know, I probably have several 100,000. And to me, so I'm not really into grading. I'm just not. Like, I wish that all my cards were raw in many ways. I mean, grading can be a little depressing, right? Like, if it's anything less than a 10, you're you know, you know, it's like you have a card that you absolutely love and you send it in for grading, and it surprises you and comes back at 2. It looks exactly the same as when you sent it, but now every time you look at that card, you're depressed because it's a 2. Somebody said it's a 2, and you loved that card before. So I'll just not that into grading. I do, you know, like having them encapsulated and the name and the year for reference and all of that. I often thought about, like, let's start a grading company where you just encapsulate it, make sure that it's authentic and not signed at a numerical grade. You know what I mean? And then there's people that are always cracking them and sending them back and cracking them and sending them back.
Yeah.
And I always wonder, like, how accurate is it? Because I hear all these people who they sent back a 9 and they got a 10, or they sent back a 7 and got an 8. So the first time, why didn't they get an 8 or a 9 or a 10? You know what I mean?
Right.
And when you're talking about vintage cards, I mean, the difference between a 9 and a 10 could be $1,000, sometimes thousands of dollars.
Right.
So, you know, I try not to get wrapped up in that. It's kind of like keeping up with the Joneses a little bit, you know, and I have gotten wrapped up in that. You know, I have a card that I love from my youth, and maybe it's a tad off center, and I see a 9 on 4 sharp corners, and I'm like, oh, let me pick that up. That's a better example. And I can't tell you how much money I've spent doing that, you know, obtaining old cards I already had in my collection, you know. So you can get wrapped up in it, and I try not to.
Yeah. Well, it's the, you know, the beginning of the year. A lot of people have goals for years if they want to like lose weight or save money or something. So what kind of goals do you have hobby related for this year?
Well, believe it or not, I've never been to the National. So my main goal is to go there this year. I mean, quite frankly, I've been scared to death to go. Right? I'll be like a kid in a candy store. I don't know, how, you know, how much money I'll want to spend. It's like at a casino, you put a certain amount aside, and when you lose that, you go to the ATM, and you lose that, and you go back to the ATM. You know, that's what scares me, and I've never gone. But this year, I'm going to make it a point. I want to go there.
Yeah. It's a lot of fun. It's
at this point in my collecting life, you know, I have bucket list cards, but I have so many. I kind of go for opportunity. You know, at this point, I'm kind of like a free safety. When I see something that's a great card that I don't have and I want, and it's a great price, I'll snag it. And so when I try to set goals of what cards to get, that, you know, I get distracted that way, because some things, just some opportunities pop up. So I'm more of an opportunist. Is that a word?
Yeah.
I don't think so at this point.
Yeah, that was going to be my next question. Was like, do you have any cards that you don't have that are on your bucket list that
Absolutely.
you know you're aiming? We all do. We never run out of a bucket list.
The 33 DeLong Lou Gehrig, and the 38 Gaudy Joe DiMaggio are probably my top two.
Right.
Yeah,
they're fantastic cards.
They really are.
Do you have any other Joe DiMaggio cards besides?
Oh yeah, I
aim
have
for
quite
them.
a few.
Okay.
I have the 41 play ball, the 40 play ball, the Burke Ross, that national game pin. I have an old All-Star photo, and those round discs. What else? I'm probably missing some.
Right. Yeah, can't go wrong with Joe DiMaggio, that's for sure.
Oh, I have the Leaf too.
Oh, the 48 Leaf.
48, 49 Leaf.
Yeah. Great card.
Yeah,
that's probably undervalued too.
Yeah, it probably is. I mean, all Joe DiMaggio cards, man, that guy was a great player.
Oh yeah. That's what I used to hear about from my grandfather all the time, was Jimmy Fox and Joe DiMaggio.
Yeah, there's a lot of argument over what's more difficult, you know, the records and so forth. But that 56 game hitting streak, I mean, nobody's even come close to it. And let me tell you this, you know, he hit the ball hard all day that last day.
Yeah.
And it's my understanding that somebody made a great play and he was an inch away from extending that. And after that one game when it was broken, he had 17 more games. It would have been a 74 game hitting streak. And he was one of the hardest guys to strike out in history too.
Right.
A great, you know, defensive center fielder. He was just an all-around great ball player. Plus, you know, he's married to Marilyn Monroe. Plus, he was Italian.
Right? You can't go wrong right there. Yeah. I mean, there was an interview I saw on YouTube with Mickey Mantle, Whitey Ford, and Yogi Berra, and the interviewer was asking, you know, who in Yankees history greatest center fielders of all time, and a lot of them were saying it wasn't Mantle. I'm sorry, it was Whitey Ford, Yogi Berra, and Phil Rizzuto, and they were all saying Mickey Mantle. But Whitey Ford, when it came to him, he said he asked Mickey Mantle that same question. He goes, Joe DiMaggio was way better than him, and this is coming straight from Mickey Mantle. He said Joe DiMaggio was just a better center fielder than he was, and
well, he's probably right defensively at least. I mean, you know, Mantle had the power.
Yeah.
But Joe, I mean, he was a good all-around hitter.
Yeah.
And probably a better defensive center fielder.
And you're right. I don't think anyone's going to come to that record for 56 games. Just
it's quite
with the publicity today. It's just I can't. It's unfathomable. I can't see it happening.
Yeah, I mean, 400's tough too, but George
Yeah,
Brett, Tony Gwynn, Ichiro all came real close.
I think that's doable.
Although
Yeah,
Tony Gwynn, he did it in a strike shortened season, so he didn't
right,
have
right,
nearly as many games as the other guys.
exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So do you have any like quick stories on like a card you passed on a few years ago and now it's worth like 10 times as much? You know, like a 52 mantle or something you could have bought for $1,000 and now it's,
Well,
crazy prices.
one that got away, and it's not like it was a steal or anything, was the 33 tattoo orbit Dizzy Dean.
Oh,
I
Yeah.
had an opportunity to buy a really nice one for like $500, but I don't like to shell out that kind of money too often. So
right.
I passed on it. Now I can't even find one.
Mm,
And
mm,
with the way vintage prices have gone up, I doubt I could find one for that.
right, right.
Yeah.
So that's probably one that I regret. I had regretted this one years ago. I had an opportunity to buy it at a mall.
Oh, no way.
And I didn't have a lot of money. I was very young when I saw it. I always regretted it and had to get one later in life.
Right. So the vintage card hobby, especially in the past few years, I would say since 2014, has just been going crazy. I feel like it's the 80s and 90s all over again. The hobby's coming back in a strong way. I mean, and a lot of people are pointing to the 54 Topps Hank Aaron rookie card was the card that it was always an expensive card, but it really shot up around 2014, and then everything has just followed.
Yep.
What do you equate the reason why his vintage is just resurged again, which is great?
Yeah, well, so interestingly, I had all my cards stored away, and my wife suggested that I make this card room, believe it or not. And so
Wow.
I did, and I brought all my cards out of storage, and that was in 2014. And so I started playing around on eBay and looking around. I got hooked again. And man, I was, finding cards. I couldn't believe how cheap. I'm like, wow, these cards must have gone way down in value. I'm picking up, old vintage cards, what I consider really great cards for next to nothing. Now, you fast forward now, and they're all, double, triple the prices that they were going for back then. I equate it to two main reasons. Number one, the reason anything like art and these kinds of things go up is a better economy, more people working, more people with disposable income.
Mm-hmm.
Number two, the people in our age group now are older and have
Mm-hmm.
and can go back and buy those cards they couldn't buy when they were young, and they're reliving their youth. That's one of them.
Mm-hmm.
What I do find interesting, and this I can't explain, is that there is an insurgence of young collectors. I see them on YouTube. I was with a friend of mine, and he's dating this woman, and she has a 9-year-old daughter.
Mm.
And he's like, her daughter's collecting baseball cards now.
Oh my God, that's
Wow.
awesome.
And I'm seeing all these young people. I went to a store in Myrtle Beach, and it was loaded with little kids, like the old days.
Yeah.
And that's the one thing I can't really explain, other than the fact that, the millennials grew up with, as the technology, like phones and so forth,
Sure.
were new to them, and they got enamored with it.
Right.
And I think maybe, the younger generation just after them want to actually hold and touch something again, maybe.
Right.
I don't know.
Yeah.
Because I was really worried about that with the younger generation. I mean, they'd
Yeah.
rather, Topps came out with that Topps bunt or whatever, and they have digital signature cards. I'm
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
what is this? Like, you can look at it on your phone, but you can't ever touch it or keep it for, the rest of your life.
Yeah, it's refreshing. I agree. I mean, we have a show here in Philly called the Philly Show 3 times a year, and kids everywhere, and it's awesome to see that, because they're going to keep it going.
Yeah, it's great.
Yeah.
I just hope, I just hope it's not like the casino kind of thing in the 90s, where people were jumping on the bandwagon because of the value.
Mm-hmm.
What will sustain the hobby is people that are doing it for the sheer enjoyment, for the love.
For the love of the hobby,
because
right?
the people that invest come and go as prices go up and down, and
Right.
a lot, and that backfires for a lot of us collectors, because you end up, if you pay a lot of money for a 5-year span and then something crashes or whatever, you end up with cards that you paid a lot more than they're worth. So
Right.
it's not good for the overall hobby. So I just hope that most people are doing it for the love.
Yeah, you have to do it for the love, because if you're right, if you're doing it for an investment, we all got burned back in the 80s with buying tons of Mark McGwire rookies, and
Yeah.
you know, Sammy Sosa and all those guys, and now they're in the dollar bin box. So you have to love it. And as far as the grading goes, I always say, you know, buy the card, not the grade. If the card looks, I bought so many cards where say a card was a 5, and I saw a 4 that was 10 times better looking, and I couldn't find a nicer 5. Just you buy what looks nice to you.
I routinely buy 5s and 6s over 7s because the 7s look awful. I mean, look at this card. If you can.
Yeah.
Can you zoom in on this?
Yeah, sure.
I mean, this card is just in great condition.
Yeah.
Right. Sorry for the glare. I don't know. But you know, it's a 1.5.
Yeah.
But who cares? It's beautiful.
Right.
I mean, I've seen 3s and 4s that don't look that good. You know, I don't know what they're finding under a microscope, but you know, when I look at my cards, I don't look with a microscope. So it looks beautiful to me.
Exactly. That's a great point, because when I try and tell kids today what, you know, buy for the eye appeal, they don't understand what I'm talking about. I said, well, how do you look at a card? You don't look at it under a loop. You look at it at, you know, like arm's length. You know, you look at like here's the one I just got here, right here, the 58. This is the 58 Topps World Series batting photos. This is a 2, and this thing's perfectly centered.
It's beautiful.
You know, and I tried to find a 4 or 5. You know, I was like, they were way off centered. I mean, to me, I look at centering first. I don't know how do you look at cards? Is it centering, corners? Like,
I'm a centering junkie.
Okay.
With vintage cards, I'd rather have it centered. I just think they look better to me.
Absolutely.
I had I picked up a 71 Kellogg's Clemente.
It's a great card. Yeah.
And when I was shopping for it, there was an 8 and a 9. And I intentionally bought the 8 because it looked nicer. The 9 was actually off center. Yeah. And, you know, I always buy based on looks.
Right.
I've had 8s and 7s that, you know, I'll get different cards and get rid of those because when I look at them, they just don't appeal to me.
Yeah. That's what it's all about, the eye appeal. It's not that's the best advice I try and tell everyone, is just don't even look at the grade. What looks good to you. So.
Yeah, you have to enjoy it. It's your card. So.
Yeah. Yeah. So, John, what kind of got you to show off your collection on Facebook and here on YouTube?
You know, that's a good question. I don't know. I think I just got enamored with Facebook early on, and I wanted to have a way to kind of have pictures of all my cards, and I started getting all kind of followers and people interacting with me, and then you know it was a go from there because that was really fun for me because I don't, like I said, I was just collecting by myself. Nobody even knew I had these cards. So when I have you know, people to interact with, and it was pretty fun. I made a video one day to throw onto Facebook, and as an afterthought, I guess I had a YouTube account, and I threw it on YouTube. And I would do that routinely, and I didn't have any subscribers or anything. And one day, Blue Jacket 66 gave me a shout out, and then Baseball Collector gave me a shout out, and then I got a couple more. So all of a sudden, people started coming to my channel and seeing what I had. So now, you know, I'm having a lot of fun with that. I really enjoy it.
Right.
Yeah.
That's what it's about. Yeah, it's definitely it. Back in the day, I was telling you earlier that you know, you didn't tell people you had a card collection just for mainly security reasons. Like it was like people thought you had like $1 million in your basement. You just didn't share it. But now with this source of YouTube and Facebook and all that, it makes you enjoy the hobby even 10 times more. Like I enjoy my cards even more now by being able to share and seeing Mike's collection and your collection and all that. It just makes it 20 times more fun.
Yeah. I mean, if you can't share it with somebody, it's just like, you know, having them stored in boxes and you never see them. That's why it's nice to have a room and display some, and you can change the displays. You get tired of looking at some. I mean, you know, they're meant to be enjoyed.
Yeah,
absolutely. So like Ray and I, we're impressed with your collection and just all the cards that you've shown on many videos that you've uploaded. So for just people starting out, like, how long have you been collecting to make this, you know, this big collection that you have? I mean, you didn't spend $1 million overnight to buy all this stuff. I mean, it must have taken you, years to put together.
Yeah, absolutely. Like I said, when I was a kid back in 74, 75 through up until about 82 was I bought a ton of cards. 83, I bought a few, and then I quit for a while. And I picked it back up around 90, 91 for a stint. And then I put them away, moved around for work and so forth. Picked it back up in 2001. Moved away again in 2003. Put them away for over a decade. And then in 2014, pulled them all out of storage. I used to keep them in a climate-controlled storage facility, so I didn't get to see them at all.
Right.
So it's been, off and on. I've had stints, but I'm an obsessive compulsive. So, when I get into it, I get in a big way. And that's one of the reasons I wanted to have my Facebook page and have YouTube is because I'm an obsessive compulsive. When I have questions about cards, I want to learn about cards, I'm always reading about them and studying up on the players. And I wanted to share, some of the knowledge that I have and what I've gathered over the years. I know about some rare cards that other people never heard of or seen before, those kinds of things. So, what's like this card here, Jack Tobin. A lot of people probably never heard of Jack Tobin. But Jack Tobin, for 3 years in a row, had over 200 hits. Batted over 250 one year. I think he batted 253. Had a lifetime batting average of 309. And this card here, there's only ever been 3 graded by PSA. These Willard chocolates are very rare. But he was he was a good player that probably very few people have ever heard of.
Right.
And so when I'm on Facebook or YouTube, it gives me an opportunity to share, some knowledge like this with other people and to learn about it too. So that's what it's all about.
Right. You showed a video once where you were in the Sports Collector Digest. You had an article done about How did that come about? That was pretty awesome.
Yeah, that came from my Facebook page. A writer, saw it and contacted me and said he was a freelance writer for Sports Collectors Digest and wanted to do a story on my card room and my future goal of, a museum of some sort. And interestingly, right before he interviewed me, this is kind of cool. He was you remember that game that Aaron Rodgers got hurt, went into the locker room, came back out and orchestrated this unbelievable comeback.
Yep.
And they were interviewing him afterwards, and you could tell he was all high on pain meds, and he was kind of loopy. Well, this guy was at that game, covering that game, right, like the day before he interviewed me. So he was telling me about it. So it was kind of interesting.
Yeah.
But yeah, that was one of the highlights of my life.
Absolutely. That was pretty cool.
I was very honored. He gave me a big spread too.
Yeah.
Yeah. So what issue was that? Was that last year? Or,
it was last September.
Last September. Okay, I'll have to look it up.
They issue that every 2 weeks. It was the first September issue. Yeah.
Okay.
September 1. Okay, great.
Yeah. And you can see that online on their website too. If you don't have the hard copy of it, you can check it out online, right? I think you can.
Yeah, and
sure.
I did a video on it and put the link actually.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay, I'll have to check it out.
Somebody called me a narcissist, but I just wanted to share it with everybody in case anybody wanted to read it.
So.
Yeah, that's pretty awesome. Your collection is unbelievable. I mean, the tour you did, I saw the video a couple days ago. It was just, pretty stellar collection. It was just mind-boggling to see all the stuff accumulated over years, as we all have. But your collection is top-notch, I have to say, definitely, without a doubt.
Yeah, the wonderful thing about collecting, even if you just collect vintage, is you will never run out of cards to obtain.
Nah.
I mean, there are so many cards out there.
Yeah.
And different things to collect.
Right.
I mean, honestly, you can never run out of things to buy.
No. And things to learn about either. I mean,
right.
I see new cards all the time, and I've been collecting for all these years.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So. All right. Well, we're kind of running short here on time. Ray, do you have any kind of last minute questions here?
No, I just I thought it was really enjoyable to watch this and to talk and share with John this collection. There's just we appreciate you being on, John. So it was
I appreciate you
an honor.
inviting me.
Yeah, you're welcome. Thank you for being on. It was an honor to have you on. Really, it was
Absolutely.
learned a lot and got to see some pretty incredible looking cards. So it was great.
Okay. Well, thank you.
Yeah. You're very welcome. All right, guys. Thanks for watching, and we'll talk to you later. Bye.
All right, take care.